I can answer that to you. Yes, you can this week. I think it's supposed to be by the end of the weekend. It's supposed to be in the 60s or so. I think that white stuff's going to be gone. I think all we have left is black stuff anyway. So let's go ahead and let that go. And I'm excited to see some spring stuff. I think Lori's trying to encourage me to get past this by putting the flowers up over the weekend. She's like, I'm going to will this into spring one way or the other. So I appreciate that so much. I'm excited about where we are with things. If you've not been able to come with us some because it's winter time or you've been off to college or maybe you're just coming and visiting for the first time, we are in a series this year of He is, I am, and we are. And we're talking about who God is. And we've been going through for the last couple of months just really lining out for each other who it is that we're serving. And who this person is, this deity is that created us and has changed our lives, that is actually, we surrender our lives to, who we let control our every being and our very fiber of who we are. For something that intimate, we need to know who He is. And so we've been kind of going through that, and we are to a beautiful point now, as we have learned more and more about who He is, that we've come to the point now where we are going to be walking through parts of the life of Moses. Moses is a beautiful character in the Old Testament, and we're going to talk a lot about that. And the main reason why I chose Moses is because he has a defining moment that we're going to talk about next week where the phrase, I am, comes into play. But to do that, I felt like today we need to kind of set up and really understand the story of Moses. Because the story of Moses doesn't start where you think that it starts. Our idea normally is we think of Moses, we think of the story of Moses at this point. We think of the basket floating in the Nile River. We think of the baby that's wrapped up in the basket covered with pitch, who floats around with his sister watching him. But it starts so much earlier than that. If you would look with me here. Oh, you've got to be park me down. If you get into Exodus chapter 1, you got your Bibles. We're going to start right there. Exodus 1, verse 5. As the Exodus begins, what has happened is that Joseph has been sold in slavery. He's gone through, he's rescued the Egyptian people. He has brought his family back to Egypt with him because of the drought and all the things that have happened. They've started the inhabitants of there, and this is how Exodus 1 starts. The descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all, and Joseph was already with them in Egypt. And this dynasty that we're going to be speaking of in just a few years runs from 70. Which I don't know about you guys, but that's a pretty good family reunion, isn't it? 70's not bad whenever you got mom and dad, brothers, and their kids. 70. That's not too bad. So they start out with just this idea of 70, and if you go into the next couple of verses, in verse 1, chapter 1, verse 8, it says that in just a short amount of time, these 70 who had rite of passage in Egypt because of what their brother had done, their brother had literally saved Egypt. Their brother literally saved the existence of everyone around there by him listening to God, by him understanding what God wanted him to do, by him speaking up to the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh listening to him because of the character of who he was. And in the 7 fat years, saving back for the 7 lean years of famine and drought. And in the midst of, if you look back in the scriptures, the people around them, when there was no more food, they came to Egypt and they had to buy food. And Egypt just got richer and richer and richer. And when there was no more money to be had, then they sold themselves for food. And because of Joseph and his family, Egypt is the predominant, the force to be reckoned with. The Pharaoh rules everything around him, and it only takes a short amount of time king in verse 8 comes to light. Not that they didn't know the history of Joseph, but look what it says. To whom Joseph meant nothing. So what? That's back in the day. Who cares? That's not my life. You ever hear that kind of stuff before? Oh, sure. Back in your day, that's how it was. But it's 2018. It's 2019 now. We don't do things that way. Right? A new king is coming to town. A new king has been raised up. This young buck thinks he's got it all figured out. And what's happened is, in just a short amount of time, Joseph's brothers and his descendants, they figured out that multiplication's a good thing. They have been fruitful and they have multiplied. And they are growing and they're expanding and they are getting bigger and bigger inside this country. And there's a fear that has began. That what if they get too big? And all of a sudden, this family who was set aside as special people, this guy who was second in all command, this guy that when he walked around, everybody said, "Thank you, Joseph, for your vision, your insight. You saved us. We owe you everything. You are incredible." All of a sudden now it's, who's that guy? So what? Your grandpa's who? Who cares? And this is how our story begins. It reminds me so much, this does, of the story. There was a guy back in the 60s, early 70s, who was really wise. Hippies loved him. He gave great insight. And in this generation of finding themselves, they decided that we need to go and sit at the feet of this gentleman. Because he gives us insight. And he was an older gentleman, but he spoke in ways that they could understand. And over time, more and more of these hippies and young people started just coming, congregating on his land. And he built into this huge compound of people. And the guy started getting really old, he started getting really sick, and he was on his deathbed, and they're all right outside the house, and they're in the house, and they're all wanting to see if he's okay. And they're around his bed and everywhere. And one of them says, "Can you give us one last word of wisdom?" And he says, one last word, yes. Rivers flow downstream. Next one, what do you say? Rivers flow downstream. Oh, wow, pass it down. One after another, they start talking all the way down. It moves all the way down the house, all the way outside, all the way down to the last person. And in the midst of the people standing in the yard, one of them says, "What does it mean?" Everybody looked at each other and said, "We don't know. We'll ask him." So through the chain of events, what does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? Goes all the way back upstairs to his room. The guy who had asked him this insightful question says, "What does it mean?" And he looks at him and he says, "Rivers don't flow downstream." Things inherently are going to always change. Even in the midst of things being said, things are changing. And if we look for things to always stay the same and look for one silver bullet, the one moment, we look for that one word of wisdom, and when we don't understand, we ask somebody back to that word of wisdom, and they say, "I'm just kidding." It doesn't. And we're left standing there going, so now what? If we get stuck in the mire of being in one place at one time, a certain way, we start to have issues. So our first thing that we need to start to understand is that change is inevitable. It is going to happen. In this church, in your family, in your home life, it changes. As you grow, as you develop as a Christian, as you grow as a family, as you shrink as a family, change is going to happen. And with change, we don't always like the way that it happens or what's going to happen. In the Israelite situation, change is going to happen. They have moved from being glorified and put in a really good place to now being enslaved. God protected them and gave them all these benefits and everything else, and has He just taken them away? Here's the question I want to ask you as we begin. Will change bring you despair, dread, and defeat? Or will change bring you trust in God? When things change in your life and they don't change the way they want it to, you want it to, is it beating you down? Is it tearing you up? Is it making where your life's not working as well as you wanted and you start feeling like there's nothing you can do about it? Is it going to lead you that way? Or is the change that is going to happen in your life, is it going to help you lean on God to find solutions? It's either one or the other. It's either one or the other. One more time, Parker, sorry. I have to give you a caveat for this, and it's not the computer's fault. It is mine, because I found out this last week I got pre-seized carpal tunnel in my left hand, and so I don't have feeling in my thumb. And so when I'm trying to change the buttons, I think I'm hitting the button, and sometimes I'm not hitting the button. So that could be a thing, I guess. So thank you, Parker, and I think we'll be okay now if I keep my finger on it. And Exodus 1:12. Watch what happens after this as we go into our second point. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites. Although there was change, it did not stop them from being who they were. Instead of complaining about it, they just kept on plugging on. Look at the next scripture. In Exodus 1:17-21, it says, the midwives, however, feared God, and they did not want the king of Egypt. They did not do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. They let the boys live, and because the midwives feared God, He gave them families of their own. See, because Pharaoh came up with a plan to help control the situation, all I have to do is just eliminate the males. And so Pharaoh put out a decree, and before he put out the decree, he talked to the midwives in a very secretive way. And he said, here's what I want you to do. When they're having these babies, if it's a boy, you just go ahead and kill it and get rid of it. Tell them it's bad pregnancy, do whatever. I just don't want any more males. Let's weed out this population. If we don't have any more males, now all females, it'll work itself out. Because they'll start intermixing with us, and we won't have this Israelite issue anymore. But the midwives wouldn't do it because they feared God. In the midst of their trial and their hardship, when they were asked to do the unspeakable, instead of being afraid that they would be taken out by the Pharaoh, instead of being fearful of what could happen to them, they followed by what God wanted them to do, and they disobeyed. And because of their disobedience, because of their fear for God, God blessed them. Because of their willingness to do the right thing instead of the wrong thing in a hard situation, God blesses them. These midwives who could not have children all of a sudden are having families of their own, and their lives changed because they were willing to do the hard stuff. Second point, struggles call for faithfulness. When we're in the midst of a struggle, God calls for it. That's the time when we're to be faithful. It's not the time to run from God. It's not the time to talk disparagingly about God. It's not the time to be frustrated with God. It's not the time to blame God. In the midst of our hardships, that's the time when we are the most looking the way that we thought they would look, and things are changing, that instead of reaching out and grabbing a hold of God and holding on to Him because He is the one steady constant, we're pushing Him away and blaming Him for something that's inevitable. In Exodus 2 and 3, we move to a great moment. Because now Moses' mother and father are going to have their baby. And there's a common theme as we read in this text about Moses. Now, I know that each one of you all that have had children, when you have your child born, they're the most beautiful, wonderful thing in the world. They're unique, and they're lovely, and they're precious, and they're so pretty to you, to their grandma and grandpa. And all children are wonderful, but if we're going to be really honest, every once in a while, some of those little critters, there's some that are just pretty stinking cute at a different level. There's some that you look at them and it's like the head looks perfectly round, the tone of the skin is just perfectly matching, the tuft of the hair, it's like the little fingers you just want to gobble up, they're so cute, and they're just, you look at that and you go, oh, God, that's good. But I think this is something a little different. Read it. And she became pregnant, and she gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. There's something about that when you start hearing these words. Why would the writer mention it in this way? I don't know a mom, one, that has a baby and goes, that was not so fine. I mean, wouldn't that be a little weird? You're like, no, send it back. No, thank you. Go ahead. Can you grab another one out of that little room over there or something? I didn't like that one. We don't do that. But our writer in here, God wanted to point it out that she saw him. Just as so many other Israelites, moms who had these little boys, saw them. And now it wasn't just the midwives who were supposed to secretly annihilate these children. Now it is an actual decree that if you have a male, they are to go and be thrown into the river and drown. They're crocodiles. They are not to be there anymore. And if you cross this, you will be punished if not killed. And there's much weeping and gnashing of teeth in Israel right now because there are parents who are having to do the unthinkable. Not only just for themselves, but to save their other children that are there in their home with them because they know that if they cross this, their whole family could be annihilated. And they have to make a decision that is not fair. And they're prepared for it because every single one of them, as they start to become pregnant, as they get further and further along, they know there's a 50-50 chance that this baby is going to be something wonderful that we can keep and love on, or this baby is something that we're going to have to do the unthinkable for, or die trying to keep it. And she looks at it, and she can see there's something different about Moses. There's something different about this one. Hebrews 11:23 says this, by faith Moses' parents hid him for 3 months after he was born because they saw he was no ordinary child. It was something special about this one. Acts 7:17-21, Stephen, in his sermon, right before he is stoned to death, is speaking to the people and he says, at that time Moses was born, and he was no ordinary child. There's something different about him. What's different? Why would they take that risk? How do they know that there's something more than ordinary here? This blows my mind every time I read it. Go back to Genesis 15. After God promises Abraham that he would be a God of many nations as big as the stars, he gives him this dream. And it blows my mind to think the father of this entire movement, this father of 1 million people at this, close to this point, he knows at the very beginning when there is one, the destiny that's going to happen in the time of Moses. Because this is what God tells him in his vision. As sun was setting, Abraham fell into a deep sleep, and with a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Then the Lord said to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in the country, not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and will be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. God told Abram at the very beginning, your people are going to go to a foreign land. They will become enslaved. They will multiply. They will leave. They will have great possessions when they leave. This is not permanent. Do you think this story was ever told to the people? How in the world could you take being mistreated so many times and keep on moving on? How in the world could you stay in a place when people treated you so badly? How in the world do you not revolt when you have the numbers that you have? Because they've been told over and over and over, in the 4th generation, God's going to raise something, and something's going to happen. And I wonder in my mind if Moses' parents, when they looked at him, they saw that he was no ordinary child, wondered, is this what we've been told all these years? Could this be what God wanted to have happen? And am I going to be willing to do God's will and not let this extraordinary child be cast away? Our third point is this. In the midst of your struggles and your hardships, your faithfulness affects the world around you. Your faithfulness that you lean on to, and the way that you perceive yourself, and the way that you do things, and the way that you act around your people around you, and the way you take care of your children, the way you act in your home, it affects the world around you. It's not just you. What happens if Moses' mother and father are no longer faithful? What if they're just too scared? What if she decides to put him in the basket, but his sister doesn't go watch him? What if she's like, oh yeah, Mom, whatever, fine, but I want to go play with my friends? And walks off and leaves that baby in the basket. The wonder years, I wonder what, I wonder what, I wonder what. But the thing we didn't have to wonder was, faithful people changed the world. Your faithfulness changes everything around you. The way that you act with each other, your faithfulness to God is passed on to your children, your neighbors, your colleagues that you work with, the people inside this building. Your faithfulness in the midst of struggles changes everything. See, as we talk about the He is, and the I am, and the we are, we need to be aware of something. That He is significant. Our God is significant, and He is a life changer. You know that. He's changed your life. He's changed your dynamic of who you are. He has led you to be who you are today, and who you want to be, and who you strive to be. But not only is He a life changer and significant, but so are you. God says next we look at it, He says, I am the I am. But in the midst of our He is, I am, and we are, you need to know that this is you too. Have you ever thought of yourself as significant? When you walk out the door today, I want you to realize you are significant. Your actions and your things that you do change the world. You don't always get to see direct effects on a day-to-day basis, but they do. He's not the only one who's significant. Because of our life in Him, He makes us significant. And finally, we as a church are significant. We have the power as a church to affect our community. We as a body of believers can be significant and change the life of someone in our neighborhood if we want to. We change the lives of our neighbors if we want to. We are significant. And we are life changers. But how are we changing life? Are we changing the lives of others because of our lack of Christianity? When we act, when we're acting, we're not here. So that when people see us and we proclaim to be Christians, they don't see the actions, they just hear the words. And it changes their whole mindset of who Christians are. Or are we going to be the people in this church that when we walk out of here, we are the same everywhere we go? We are leaning on each other, we are loving each other, we are serving each other, we are reaching out to our community, we are trying to spread the message of God to everyone, and we're changing lives because we're giving them hope. The question we've got to lay out with today is, you're significant no matter what. Are we going to be a significant hypocrite? Or are we going to be a significant hope bringer? That's our choices. It's either one or the other. You're going to change somebody's life. What kind of change do you want to be? That's the question. There may be someone here that haven't had an opportunity to give their life to Christ yet. To let Him lead you in making significance. And maybe for some of you all, maybe it's been a long time since you really thought about whose you are anymore. Maybe you've had it on cruise control for a while, and you've just kind of been just rolling with the flow and just kind of doing what you have to do to get by day to day, and you forgot how important you really are. And maybe you just need some prayers and saying, hey man, let me get realigned where I need to be. Help me to refocus where I've got to go. Whatever it is that you need, we want to be here for you. We take some time at the end of our lesson this morning on Sundays and our time together. We want to be here to pray for you. If you want to learn more about Christ, we want to be here for you for that. If you just need some prayers and encouragement, maybe you have a prayer of praise. We were talking about today in class that they talks in the scriptures that people came together in prayers of praise. And maybe today's the day that you go, you know what? Praise God. Something wonderful has happened. I want to share it with my brothers and sisters. Whatever it is we can do for you, let's do that for you now as we stand.